what happened was then Tesla came out with all electric. And all electric was much more appealing to the environmentally oriented people and I would say wealthy liberals with a social change mindset on both the East Coast and West Coast of the United States. And they bought Teslas like they were going out of style.
Thanks for joining us once again. Today, we actually have a show that goes both directions. The first part of the show is, was Bob Lutz really right about Tesla has no advantages? And on the flip side of that, we talk about the fact that Elon Musk made a prediction that there were certain things that Tesla had to do in order to not have the entire concept of EVs wiped out by large players globally. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the show, like some better ideas on investing and trading, please join us on Patreon. So, the first thing I wanted to start with today is to just post the fact that there is some research out there that suggests that based on what the temperature is, particularly on the low side, but obviously on the high side as well, the decline in battery range can be anywhere from 30 to 60%. And it really depends on how cold it is, which is the problems that we would have here. Not as much problems with that above 100-degree space, but obviously that's possible as well. So the issue that comes up with this is that what this means then is, let's say you have a car that goes 300 miles of range. And let's say you live in the upper half of the United States, anywhere from, let's say, Boston to Washington State. If you hit the 60% loss in range button, you're now talking under 150. Now let's say you turn your heater on in the car and the radio, and now you have this problem where you went from 300 mile in range to below 150 just on sort of the battery warming process, and now, throw in a heater, etc. And what we have here is this problem popping up of something called range anxiety. So when consumers purchase vehicles, Elon indicated, I believe, that it's either 42 or 72% of Teslas are typically leased. Those customers are in those vehicles for approximately 3 years, maybe it's 2, etc. So they can swap out of that decision. Now, part of the game that's going on right now is consumers have a really hard decision to make. They might like the electric experience, but by them having a limited amount of time that they were doing it, they now have the ability to determine, do they want to continue on this path? And according to research that I just read, approximately 50% of the people who've gone electric are now planning on returning to ICE engines. And the question is, why is that? And the biggest thing that I can determine is obviously range anxiety, but not only range anxiety, the craziness associated with charging. So Tesla's operating with 95% uptime for their chargers. The combined average uptime for the largest entities that have charging facilities is somewhere in that 60% zone. So there's basically a 50-50 chance you'll be able to charge your EV if you weren't able to do so at home. But if you are not doing so at home and you wanted to go to one of those chargers, you're screwed. So Elon came up with this answer that we thought was kind of weird, and we'll see how it plays out. And his answer was, we'll allow non-Tesla vehicles to charge at Tesla charging facilities. Well, that is kind of a good idea, but it inconveniences the Tesla owners But what it does also is allows consumers to sample the Tesla experience and decide whether the current EV they have is satisfactory or they'd like to move over to the Tesla experience. So that time spent at Tesla's chargers is actually free advertising as to why it is they really needed to buy a Tesla, even though they chose another brand for whatever reason that was the case. So what I'm digging for here is just the fact that it seems that, yes, if there was a 100% wholehearted effort by the large OEMs to deliver in every facet a quality solution in the EV space, including charging that's branded Mercedes or Audi or whatever the brand may be, we would definitely see adoption be rather dramatic, but that has not occurred. Now, I keep asking the question, why do I want to spend $100,000 on a vehicle and have range anxiety? And I believe that's what a lot of these consumers seem to be saying. I also wanted to note, think about it. Have you ever seen any dealerships with a gas station at the end of the parking lot that says that brand, be it Mercedes or Daimler or BMW, etc., where you're seeing a line of customers for that brand there to purchase, as you see with Tesla? The answer is no. So what I'm digging for here is the idea that if you give just enough of a product where people are angry, they will then switch to, for example, a hybrid. So now they can get electric and have the hybrid. But the key issue here is something called competitive advantage. Now, Elon made a comment, this was years ago, maybe 8 years ago, where he said, when we first started Tesla, we did some research. We went through the phone book and looked up where we could get the parts to create a car. And within about 3 days, we figured out that about 80% of the parts needed to create a brand new car brand you could get done easily. So you could actually have your own brand of car ready to go in a few months, but in terms of ordering, ready to go in a week. Now, what's good about that? Well, that means that you potentially have competitors entering the space in about a week. But the other part of this is, wait a second, you don't have a dealership network. You don't have a parts facility for those cars. You don't have long-term customer relationships. So there's a lot of pillars to why it is that GM or Ford or any of the major brands have the customer relationships that they do. So what is coming up for me is, what is the advantage of the large OEMs relative to Tesla that facilitates them wanting to help nurture the growth of electric vehicles? 2 data points. Number one, we often talk about the 1-year supply of the Model E, but it was just announced by Ford that they're suspending production of the Lightning truck for about 4 months because of lack of demand. They haven't talked about what's on the shelf, but what this illustrates is the fact that the consumers, even if it can be produced by one of the big makes, aren't interested in their product offerings. And the question is why? And what I'm coming up with is the fact that there are a lot of unique ways, for example, the 80-20 battery rule. Even if you have a battery that goes 300 miles, you don't want to fill it up more than 80% on a regular basis, and you don't want to drop below 20% on a regular basis. So the real usable range just dropped. Now we add in the whole issue of, time of year challenges and losing range during the coldest months, and that introducing question marks that could have you or your family stuck on the road and unable to find charging. So I'm sort of fascinated by all of this, because is there a backdoor effort to make sure that the whole idea of EVs do not work? And therefore, it validates consumers stepping backwards into into the old ICE vehicles that they had before, because they don't have all these headaches. And so the less ubiquitous Tesla becomes and the charging facilities become, it validates the choice of getting rid of your EV and going back to an ICE vehicle. And that obviously doesn't serve the planet well. It wouldn't serve Tesla very well. And it's a good reason why Elon may have chosen to open up those chargers, because that advertising of those individuals seeing how well Tesla's organized allows Tesla to potentially pick up a lot of new sales from customers who are having bad experiences with their current provider. So as you'll see, Bob's answer, or Bob Lutz's answer, was, yeah, all along the answer has been, if you want an EV, just do a hybrid, done. You have both types of engines and you never have to worry about range anxiety. He's right, but it also forces the cost of those vehicles higher, which is another reason to go back to ICE vehicles, because you don't have any of these issues. So I'm fascinated by how this is all playing out, because the estimation was that the large OEMs around the world would make a concerted effort to match every aspect of what Tesla does, and then all of a sudden we will have an environment where the planet is cleaned up in the process, etc. What if you could just frustrate the consumers enough that they perceive the whole EV revolution is a waste of time, energy, and money, and therefore they should not do it? And so I feel like right now we're right on the tipping point of that being the case. What's going to happen as we go forward over the next few years? Obviously, we're going to see what happens. But I believe that the 50% returning to ICE vehicles and allow that concept to keep rolling forward really illustrates why it is wise for Tesla to risk angering current Tesla owners as we figure out whether it's going to be ICE, hybrids, or straight EVs that will win the future. I'm hopeful that it's the EVs, but there's no incentive from the oil companies or the current manufacturers, who lose a lot of business as they enter a realm where they're not the dominant player. So my belief right now is that the OEMs are doing just a good enough job that if they wanted to get serious, they could actually jump back in and successfully blunt the Tesla threat. They didn't want to be good enough at EVs that all of a sudden their competitive advantages associated with ICE, and that's everything from all the parts and the repair of those parts, obviously their dealer networks. There's a lot of built-in reasons why the large OEMs have been successful and are trying to maintain that success over time. So the perhaps last item I wanted to review today is what's going on with the Cybertruck. I am fascinated by what's happening with this vehicle. The reason is that there's something called a consumer. So there's actually something called the Model X, which obviously is the large SUV from Tesla. And Elon loves it because of how cool the rear gull-wing doors are. But based on price and long-term functionality of keeping those doors working, the sales of that vehicle have dropped dramatically to extremely low numbers. Hence, Elon really tries to be seen in that vehicle all the time as a way to get folks to consider buying it. We may have to make a focus show on this if it continues, but America's a free country. If you want to buy a Cybertruck, however you perceive it to be fast or looks good or whatever reason, that's your business. Who cares? If a lot of them are purchased and sold, it actually shifts the market toward validating that. There are problems with it. For example, Geico has stopped covering it. So we got insurance issues there in terms of can you get insurance for it because of some of the issues that have popped up in accidents with that vehicle. I was kind of stunned. I just learned about the fact that because of the cost of parts, relatively minor damage can result in the vehicle being totaled out because the cost of getting those parts and doing those repairs is so high that the insurance companies are choosing to just write them off fairly early in the process. So there are a lot of issues that could impact this vehicle. I just think that we should just let the marketplace decide what's going to happen, because there are some people that have gotten and are using the vehicle successfully. There are some people that have gotten and not happy with it, and they've tried to sell or have sold or whatever they've done with it. But I just think it's fascinating, the efforts to sort of attack, rather than saying, hey, consumer, let your dollars decide what's going to happen to this vehicle or not. And thus far, I'm impressed. It seems like, for the quarter, I guess the number was 6,000 vehicles were sold. I don't know if it's rising or falling, but frankly, I think the consumers have a right to make that call. And once they make the call, we'll know what's going to happen, because Tesla's factories have the flexibility to move more of whatever is selling through that line. And I think that's how it should be decided. It's not a great fit for me for a number of reasons, but if you purchase one, it's none of my business. Enjoy your vehicle and enjoy the money you spent on it, and only you can determine what that might be and its value, etc. At any rate, I want to thank you once again for joining us. Hope you took time out to vote. Next, we have our health tips. Just a reminder of your 20-minute walk a day as a way to help with the mental health management, as well as some exercise. Number 2, once a week for fried foods, no more. Also wanted to encourage you to try to cut the sugar intake a bit. My suggestion in that regard would be to cut up some cucumber, lemon, a little bit of ginger, as well as a sprig of mint, and just toss that in a bottle with water. And I think you'll find that there's a sophisticated number of flavors going on, give most the sensation of having put sugar in there in a sweet tea, which is the kind of stuff that I typically drink, but have found this to be great, and wanted to invite you to try it out to see what you think of that. At any rate, once again, thanks for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, au revoir, la hitro, hoda haipes, ni hama, kombawa, and in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks, and have a great day.